Man, what a horrible way to die. What is that? A disease? I hope it's not contagious.
Overblood is a sci-fi survival horror game where a man wakes up from cryogenic freezing to find himself alone in a strange place. Atmosphere. The game's atmosphere is one of mystery and isolation, with the main character Raz exploring the cold, sterile environments of the unknown place he wakes up in. You have no idea what's going on for a lot of the early game, and the 90s experimental music and PlayStation 1 graphics give the whole place a lonely and creepy vibe. There's no sign of anyone, and there's obvious structural damage to the place. The computers keep saying that something has gone wrong, but it's unclear what. The mystery of what's going on sustains the game for a lot of its duration, and after finding a dead, mutated body in an elevator, things take a sinister turn. Though some of the early game's tense atmosphere is ruined by Raz's robot ally Pipo, who keeps on relentlessly making beeping noises every time it's around you, and after you meet Millie, the atmosphere takes another bit of a dive again, as they stop quite a lot to talk about things, which is the only real time the story makes an appearance.
No! Stay away! Oh! I thought you were... that thing.
I can't tell you how relieved I am. I'm so glad to find another person.
The game is only really creepy thanks to the way things look and sound, with the added mystery of not knowing what's going on. And for a lot of the later game, its atmosphere is really struggling to keep on being creepy. But for the early game, it's very impressive, even if it isn't very deep. That's one Harry Mason.
I'm a dead man.
Scares. Overblood tries its hand at jump scares, but none of them really seem to land. The enemies themselves were creepier when they weren't alive, and fighting them is a real pain because of the combat being just awkward and unsatisfying. Though the optional first-person perspective may have improved this if the combat wasn't so janky. The game has ammunition and health management, with bullets and healing items being essential for later fights, and not having these can make the game pretty much unwinnable, since the only way to find them is to crouch down and push X on everything. Since none of them are visible when exploring, it can make the game a little tedious as well. The closest to being frightening the game gets is its environmental dangers, like water overflowing in the sewer area, or jumping over large gaps and precarious surfaces, and sometimes they're only frightening because the controls are again pretty janky. Overblood isn't really here to scare the player, and when it tries, it's not very good at it. That's still one Harry Mason. Sound design. The music is incredibly 90s, with whirling synths and reverb-soaked whistling noises and flutes that play sometimes nonsensical melodies. It's very spacey, with an excessive amount of reverb on a lot of the tracks, and they give off a haunting, sinister vibe. The more basic ones have a menacing electric piano, vocal choirs and strings, and they provide a feeling of reflection and mystery as it gets lost in the reverb. The music is very impressive, and it gives a lot to the environments even if they repeat the tracks a lot. Sound effects are also reverb laden, and the silence that follows every door opening is incredibly tense. Overall, they're full of appropriately 90s noises that makes things like navigating the item menu feel alien and strange. The voice acting is a bit hit or miss, but it feels like most of it is a dialogue problem, and I'm unsure if there were translation problems or not, but what they're reading feels sometimes poorly paced or just awkward, but it's not as bad as some of the other games of its era. There's a ton of reverb on everything, and it's fantastic. Everything from footsteps to using items has an unreal depth to it that makes the station feel infinite. The game doesn't really utilise directional audio, but there's not much of a requirement for it in this game. Overall, the sound design goes a long way to help the lackluster graphics. That's 2 Harry Masons. Gore. There's not really any gore in the game, and I'm not sure it needed any, but the bodies you find early on that are suffering from the infection are oddly creepy with their scaled grey skin, and they're strange enough to generate yet more mystery. The game didn't need any gore, and what it has instead still feels appropriate. That's 3 Harry Masons.
What is this place? How did I get here? I can't remember. I can't remember myself. My gosh, I don't even know who I am.
Story. The story begins with Raz awakening in the cryogenic chamber and placing a memory chip in a robot he calls Peepo. As the game goes on, he meets Millie, and the two try and uncover the mystery of his origins and the history of the place that they're in. The mystery that's generated at the start intrigued me a great deal, and the first time you find a body in an elevator, I was seriously enjoying what was happening and couldn't wait to find more. But the story has a major plot twist that it didn't do a very good job at hiding, and as a result I anticipated it several hours before its reveal. I found the story of finding a cure for Raz after he gets infected to be a bit uninteresting, and the dialogue didn't make it any better. There's no gameplay consequences to it, and because of it, there's a real disconnect between the story and the game. For a game that builds a mystery so well, its payoff is kind of lackluster, making the final score 3 out of 5 Harry Masons. Overblood isn't much of a horror game, and its horror elements don't leave much of an impact. It's a spooky adventure, but one I admit I actually quite enjoyed. Again, I'd like to remind you this whole thing is down to my opinion in horror games, and if you don't share this opinion, then that's cool, I get it. There'll be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching. And always go check out Bumps in the Middle of the Night. Peace.